Steve Mesler, thank you for joining us on this and looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us at the conference. Tell us a bit about Classroom Champions and how that's involved with engaging with the public.
Well, thank you for asking, and I'm excited to see everybody in September, right in my backyard here. As I sit here in Calgary, don't let any of the American things in the background fool anybody there. I've been a Calgarian for the last 20 years. Classroom Champions is the nonprofit and charity that my sister and I, Dr. Lee Parisi, and I started back when I was still competing and I was an athlete. And I mean, the mission of the organization is to empower children socially, emotionally, and academically through the mentorship and mindset of world-class athletes. So we believe that there are a ubiquitous set of skills across successful people, whether they're athletes, whether they are entrepreneurs, whether they're the best teachers in the world, or the best architects. And that has to do with the ability to set goals and persevere and lead. And ultimately, we engage with the community by partnering with schools and school districts to make this happen and bring our curriculum and bring our programs and bring these incredible athletes. We've had over 300 Olympians and Paralympians and NHL and NFL and NCAA players participate. And ultimately, our work gets done through partnership with teachers, with principals, and with school districts. And then we also leverage the general public both as donors as well as corporations and philanthropists to support the work.
Let's have a bit of fun. Let's find out a little bit more about Steve Mesler. Which three people, it's one of my favorite interview questions, which three people, living or dead, would you want to have lunch with? And you can break it down separately or all together or however.
Three people, living or dead, to have lunch with. I'll go with from a, I'll start with a living. And are we having lunch together? Or are we having lunch separately? Like, am I cultivating a table or am I doing these as one-offs?
How about cultivating a table?
Oh, all right. I like that better. I would say I would like to have Barack Obama sit down. I think when you break the barriers that he broke, I would want to understand his perspective on some things. I would like to have, and again, this is my Americanism, I think, clearly showing through. I'd like to have one of what we call in America our founding fathers. I would really like to understand, as we think about some constitutional challenges our country is going through and maybe going through in the future. I'd like to have Barack Obama, one of our founding fathers, to really have a conversation and understanding about what their intentions really were and what they think about how my home country has interpreted what their thoughts and feelings were. And then I'd probably pull way further back into like an Aristotle or someone out of like the old Greek democracy time periods when those folks were thinking about it. Three different people from three different time periods. I would love to lob a question and then just like let them go. I'm very fascinated. I am not a constitutional scholar. I am not a lawyer. I'm not any of those things. But I think that the way that we interpret and think about these things today is going to have such an impact on my children's lifetimes, and how the decisions that we make today as a society around some of these things are going to really affect that moving forward. So that's the lunch that I would love to have.
What do you value in your friends?
I love that question. I value confidentiality and trustworthiness. I really appreciate having spent some time in the public sphere. I really appreciate my closest friends, being able to have a conversation with them and just be able to share my perspective without it being judged. And I hope that I can offer that same thing to my friends where, again, I think we live in a time right now where it's really hard I wrote about this in my biweekly newsletter just recently, but I think we live in a time where it's hard to spend time with people that we have disagreements with about important things. And I don't necessarily think that's the best way for us to act as a society, that just because you're friends with somebody who thinks something maybe very, very different than you in important areas of life doesn't mean that they can't be your friend. And doesn't mean that they shouldn't be your friend. I grew up in Buffalo, so I grew up with Canadian culture as part of my childhood as well. To go down south in the 90s and have friends from Mississippi and Alabama and Kentucky that I'd never had friends with before, and get to be friends with them and kind of decide what we were and what we weren't going to talk about. And then moving to a place like Calgary almost 20 years ago and seeing those differences. I think that's the thing I value in my close friends, is being able to have those conversations without judgment.
Finally, why would you say somebody should come to the conference?
I think it's maybe a whole lot of those things that I talked about with friendship, which is, especially after 3 years or 2.5 years of not being able to do these kinds of things, I think it's so nice to be together with like-minded people who are trying to accomplish the same things and do that in person and spend the whole day with them. I think we can accomplish a lot. We've all clearly proven that we can accomplish a lot via Zoom. But knowing that the best part of life happens in between the major things, it happens in the hallways, it happens at the coffees, it happens at the dinners and the lunches. I think that's why, come and expand yourself beyond. Yes, you could get the work done via Zoom, but you can't get the flavors, really, done and accomplished without being there in person, without spending that extra time.